good evening, and thank you for joining us for the second installment of the Educate and Elevate workshop, our spring edition. My name is Kiara Potts. I will not forget to introduce myself today, and I am the president of the Potts Foundation. Today's conversation is going to revolve around business professionalism, workplace etiquette, and effective communication. One of the major things right now with the internet being what it is, I think that we've truly forgot how to conduct ourselves in a way that is professional, in a way that maintains good etiquette, and how to communicate. With having so much access to everything, we really just have forgotten the basics. And so the purpose of this conversation is just to remind you what professionalism within the workplace and workplace etiquette and effective communication looks like. We have a phenomenal group of speakers that will help us in this conversation. They're going to get the opportunity to share who they are and what they do with you. Towards the end of the conversation, they are also going to let you know how to reach them. If you are watching us on Facebook, I just ask that you take a quick moment to hit the share button, and we are going to get started. If you have any questions at any time, please drop them in the comments and we will address your questions as they come up and as it is appropriate for the conversation. Now, I'm going to kick things over to our host for this evening, Dominique Capard, and she's going to introduce herself and we will get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Potts. As she stated, my name is Dominique Capard, and I do have the great pleasure of serving as Vice President of the Potts Foundation. I am excited to be able to host this month's Educate and Elevate workshop. So I have worked in corporate America for about 13, 14 years now, since graduating from the Alabama A&M University. And I do And I do have a bachelor's in marketing and have an MBA also with a concentration in marketing, which I have moved on to talent acquisition. And I've been working in talent acquisition now for the past 6-7 years. So I have worked for both Verizon and Amazon in talent acquisition and essentially recruiting and talking with individuals on all levels from entry level to mid to senior level engineers. So super excited to be able to have this great conversation around professionalism, business etiquette in the office, outside of the office, because a lot of us now do work from home and that looks a little different from actually being in the office, but there is still something that we need to be mindful of even when we're working from home or wherever that may be. So super excited to be able to host this conversation and provide a lot of insight from these experts here.
Thank you. I forgot to say that we are in a room full of bulldogs. So everybody that you see before you graduated from the Alabama A&M University, and that within itself, speaks volumes. They say start here, go anywhere, and we literally we are a byproduct of that tagline. And so that's all I had. I'm going to be quiet now and kick it back over to Dominique.
Awesome. So what to talk a little bit about the purpose of Educate and Elevate. And I have my little note sheet over here. So if you see me glancing over, that's just so I don't forget anything. There's nothing wrong with that. But really, this is the purpose of this is to provide information to high school students who are transitioning from high school to college, or college students who are transitioning from college to the workforce. We know that that can be alarming. That is a huge transition. So we want to ease that and provide whatever insight that we can. And really our organization's purpose is to really be able to provide knowledge, to provide information, some things that maybe we weren't taught before we transitioned from this fine university into the workforce. But really we want to make sure that we are passing along that knowledge, and especially individuals that are in certain fields and are experts in those fields. We want to make sure that we do our due diligence with finding those individuals that they may be able to spread this information. So that's just a little gist about our Educate and Elevate workshops. And the intent of this workshop, as Kiara stated, we are going to be talking a lot about business professionalism. We're going to be talking about business etiquette, and then also effective communication. And so we're going to go ahead and start some intros. So we're going to go ahead and whomever wants to go first can go ahead and take a stab at it. Okay, Jasmine.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Dr. Jasmine Young. I am a medical speech language pathologist. I typically deal with disordered communication, but I feel like that there is a lot of work that we do as communication professionals that helps people who have communication difficulty in the professional environment as well. I am a two-time graduate alum of the Alabama A&M University. Go Bulldogs. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in communicative sciences and disorders and a master's degree in communicative sciences and disorders. I have been working as a medical speech language pathologist for almost 19 years. I'm almost afraid to say. I have a plethora of experience. I have taught on the university level, so I do work with incoming freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, as well as people who are in graduate school for communication sciences and disorders or speech language pathology. I have a private practice called Community Therapy Speech Language Pathology, and it is threefold practice that works specifically with patients who are having communication disorders, but we also work on the side of elective therapy or elective services for people who are in professional careers who would like to improve their communication style, whatever that may be. If they're trying to get a promotion or they're trying to or want to work on presentation skills and things like that, I provide services for them as well. And for those people who are out there who have never heard of speech language pathology, let me tell you, I am a product of a wonderful program at the Alabama A&M University. And I will say that the profession is approximately 3.6% of people who identify as Black. And so we would love to have more people come on who are people of color. And, you know, you can do all kinds of things with speech language pathology, especially go into corporate speech pathology. And that's something I'll talk about a little bit later.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Mr. Evan Brown.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Evan Brown, affectionately known as Coach Eb. I am a serial entrepreneur who has actually made a big dive back into the corporate space after, 5.5 years. So I'm pretty excited to share about a little bit about how that journey, how important it is for things like effective communication when in places of transition from a career standpoint. Outside of that, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I'm a business strategist. I have been helping people create generating revenue generating ideas for the last 6.5 years. I've worked with nonprofits, government agencies, government organizations, religious organizations, schools, personal brands, small brands, restaurants. I've been blessed to be able to do it all. So I'm pretty excited about being a part of this conversation, especially being in this space where, as an entrepreneur, the person who's chased the dream, who is still chasing the dream, but also has chosen to diversify his streams of income by stepping back into the corporate space, and some things that I had to relearn or become reacquainted with after a hiatus, I guess you could say. So I'm pretty excited about this conversation, and I look forward to diving further in.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your introductions. I am thoroughly impressed myself by you two. So I am excited to hear what you guys are going to share with us. And before we even deep dive into the conversation, again, anyone that is joining us, thank you so much for jumping on. Please do take the time to share this on Facebook, because I have a feeling that we're going to have some really insightful and meaningful content that others don't want to miss out on. So we want to make sure that we do hit that share button on Facebook. So the way I really would love for this to go is really kind of flow organically. Of course, we do have an agenda. We do have some topics to cover, but please, let's feel free to jump into the conversation wherever you have something, to say about it. So really, let's look at the first thing. So what does professionalism mean to you? And either one of you can take that one first, but what does professionalism mean to you personally?
Well, I'll tell you this. Initially, professionalism was this construct of way of being for me in the beginning, specifically starting as a new clinician and going into the workplace. Professionalism looks very different on the clinical side than it did in the classroom. And so for me, it was defining professionalism for myself as well as for what I considered my personal brand. So I feel like that professionalism is a way of representing who you truly are in a personal brand in this package, so that when people see you, they know exactly what they're going to get. A lot of people will define professionalism in particular terms, but oftentimes professionalism for some people is pretty subjective. Maybe 20 years ago, wearing my hair like this would not be considered professional. And thank God for things like the Crown Act and things like that, that allow us as Black women to wear our hair the way we would like it to. But we have to understand that professionalism is definitely subjective. You know, there are some things that our companies will put out there as what they consider to be professional attire, a professional dress, a professional way that we present ourselves. That's one thing, but I do believe that professionalism can be described by different people in different ways. And for me, it's representing your own personal brand and how you want to present yourself.
Love it. What about you, Evan?
I totally second that. One of the things that I was going to lead with is that I do believe that professionalism is subjective, for the personality type, but specifically before the industry. So currently right now I'm in education, and as blue collar or as white collar, as some people may ascribe education to be, it is becoming more and more relaxed year by year. But of course, because generations are changing, leadership is changing, values and kind of structure and core values and stuff like that are really kind of shifting to catch up to the time. So I definitely believe it's super subjective, but I can stand behind it. You know, you really showing up in the best way that you desire to present yourself. Because when it comes to your personal brand, people have limited personal branding to business, restaurant, you know, but you are your brand. You know, what you lead with, what you portray, what you showcase to the world really is you give them a snapshot into who you are, or most importantly, you're giving them what you think that they should have. So I think we have to be conscious about what we put or what we lead with or what we put before people, because they're making generalizations. You know, I've been invited into certain rooms because of professionalism by some people's standards, but I've also not been invited to certain rooms because of professionalism by another person's standards. One of the things I was actually having a conversation with some of my coworkers yesterday was, in my opinion, the attire barrier. You know, what professional attire is, what business casual is, what business professional is, I have noticed to be extremely different from Black versus white. You know, I had a situation actually this week. I wore a turban to work. And, you know, typically I'm in a Title I school, so it really in Atlanta. So of course you would think that it wouldn't be an issue. But we had some district leaders coming the next day, and I was specifically asked not to wear my turban again. And I said, well, what's wrong with my turban? When Randy from down the hall actually wears a trucker cap and the same boots, the same khakis, and the same polo, he literally rinses it out and puts it back on, you know. But to him, that is like from what he's been taught, from what he's been how he's been, I guess I don't want to say raised, but stewarded, that to him is appropriate attire. I couldn't get away with the hat at work. I could barely get away with the turban. So I said all that to say, I do believe it is subjective, but it's most importantly how you desire to show up for you, because you are your first billboard. Before your resume gets to somebody's hand, they're making an assumption or a generalization about how you present yourself and also what they've heard.
Definitely. So, and I would just say too, working in corporate America, I can definitely attest to the change of attire from, and I know probably even when I started my career, it was probably trickling off then, but we were very limited in the things that we could wear. You know, it was pretty much slacks, you know, button down shirts, dress shirts kind of situation. And we weren't even face to face with customers, but it was just the fact that was what business professional was. And that's what you came to work, and it had this, basically saying that if you dress this way, you would do better on your job, is what they said. And, you know, some people may live the lifestyle, if I look good, I feel good, then I'll do good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be in a button down and I need to be in slacks and heels every single day. So I have definitely seen the transition From back then to where we are now, where you can almost get away with wearing sweatpants and t-shirts type of thing, but we still bring forth a good effort. So it's very interesting to see that dynamic. But to also be able to say that, yes, I can get my job done and I don't have to necessarily be uncomfortable all day doing it too. So yeah, that business look and professionalism has definitely changed over the years, especially as you were saying, Jasmine, with hair and the different ways that we feel comfortable. We may have been able to do it, but not so much comfortably, and not having you to be questioned as soon as you come into the office. So I love the way this conversation is starting off and kind of transitioning from that to workplace etiquette. So now, Ed, you're teaching in a school. I'm assuming it's school now. Now, what does workplace etiquette kind of look like for you? That may be a little different from Jasmine.
Absolutely. There's so much red tape when it comes to being in this education space. I am not necessarily forward facing as a teacher, but I am doing marketing communications and engagement for the school district. So it's kind of like almost the same thing. But what professionalism looks like for me in the workplace now, it is almost pretty much like following my job description to the T. And that's probably maybe a weird answer, but I have recognized that the more I just do what I'm asked to do, the better off my work experience is. And so it kind of means, like, of course, like following the set guidelines, following the rules, doing what is asked of me. And I've seen how that has been transformative, even in how I've been able to be coined as the guy that's going to do his part, but not necessarily I'm not going to go above and beyond, and I know that may seem kind of really alarming because most people step into corporate America, willing to break their back for these institutions. But one of the things that I genuinely have seen is that, something could happen to you today and you legitimately would be replaced tomorrow. And so now, because I have that rationale, I really do believe in doing what is asked of me by way of my job description. And of course, if there's a space or a place where I feel as though I could lend my brilliance or my hand, I will do so. But that is not that's not the forethought that I'm leading with now. So professionalism to me looks a little different than what it used to. It used to be going into a place, break my back, give my absolute all to prove to management, to my superiors that I am worthy of what is next. However, I do feel as though, but now my thought process is more so doing what is needed of me to make sure that I have a work-life balance so that I can come in here and give what is needed and still have something for out there. It's kind of interesting how that has shifted, but that is the story that's my story right now. And I know I'm not the only one, but yeah.
And it's funny you say that because, it does shift as you get older and you get into your career and you get set into your career. Like I said, almost 19 years of experience. I started working in skilled nursing facilities. Mine is more so medical. The workplace etiquette is definitely different. Our etiquette is, if physical therapy has that patient already, you don't just come in and take them. That's the etiquette part of it, like you just don't do that.
Yeah.
But the difference is that most schools now have clinics on campus. All of them have clinics on campus for you to do your clinicals and your internships and things like that for speech language pathology and audiology. And in school, these clients, you're more so in an outpatient setting. So these clients come to you, they sit in front of you and you only, and you don't have to share. But when you get into the real world, you have to make sure that these patients are seen by the people. Their family could come to visit them. Their priest could come to visit them. They might want to go to an activity or something like that. And it's up to us to make sure that they have a great quality of life and not just including you saying, hey, you have to come see me and that's all you have to do today. So that's a part of my workplace etiquette, which is completely different than being a teacher. Now, when I was teaching at the university level, part of my workplace etiquette was sharing rooms with other programs. So I was in the same building with education at the time. And sometimes we would need to, set a schedule ahead of time to use a particular room if we wanted to use it for students or something like that. A part of that is just making sure that you are coming in a courteous way, specifically for those who with whom you work. And if you don't, then there can be a little bit of tumultuous times, I guess you could say. You want to be able to get along with people.
Yeah.
But you also want to be able to have the confidence to ask for what you need as well and not get run over. So there's a part of that that's a part of the workplace etiquette as well.
Right, definitely. And I'll say for myself, it's a little different because I don't necessarily have a workplace now. I work from home, and so I have virtual workplace etiquette, I guess you can say. And what does that look like for me? All of our meetings are going to be virtual, but you still have to be respectful to your coworkers. You still have to be respectful to your clients that you're working with as well too. So time management is vitally important too. You just don't want to show up to a call or on a call and you're eating a snack or you're out of breath or whatever the case may be, and they just know that, okay, did they forget about this call? Or you're trying to gather your stuff, you're still trying to get your notes together, especially if you have to present information, present data. You're not prepared. So more so for me, working from home, it's about preparation. Is really a focus when it comes to etiquette, because you have to be mindful of times when you're trying to plug in and request a 10-minute calendar on somebody who has legit time blocked off on their calendar all day, so you know that they're busy. You need to make sure that you get to your points really quickly, because you need to be mindful of their time and you need to be thankful and appreciative of their time and talking with them. So when it comes to workplace etiquette from the work from home stance, it's really going to be a time type of thing. I can speak to and attest to myself. And you have to be able to utilize those tools that you have to help manage your time too. So your Outlook calendars, your Google calendars, whatever the case may be, utilize those things to the best of your ability and make them work for you, because it's not just put this on there and forget about it, but there's ways that they can remind you. You can set up weekly reminders, monthly reminders, carve out time to prepare for those things as well too. So that's been one of the major things working from home. I have really learned how to utilize my calendars to the best of my ability in preparation for things. So kind of moving on to the next topic too. So how does professionalism really affect the workplace? So if we're in a place that's just so chaotic, do we feel that we would still be able to get our job done? Do we feel like if we have individuals that are just all over the place and not, getting their job done, do we still feel like we can be successful in our roles? How do you guys feel about professionalism in the workplace and how it affects it?
I would say a lot of the things you just mentioned, as far as like proper planning, being prepared, that stuff shifts. I could be totally wrong here, but I don't think any profession is now just a solo venture. Everyone is working a part of a larger organism or a larger team. Even if you're an entrepreneur and you're working by yourself, you're not always really working by yourself. So I think those components really can affect everything. And I think that's why it's super important for there to be, in my opinion, a written standard or a formal communication that really kind of lets people know this is what is expected and this is what is needed to be successful in these roles. Because when you start, as Jasmine mentioned, Dr. Jasmine mentioned, how, people need to see 5 different people, that requires some teamwork. That requires each and every one of us understanding that we have to maximize our time with our patients, because they have to get to this next stage, to this next person. And it's vital, because the person that we're serving needs all of these services. They don't need just 3, they need all of them. So it's imperative that for us to do things like be great with our time, try to be as organized as possible. I know it's a little difficult from what I understand in the virtual space, kind of sometimes working from home, the comfortability, but I think honestly, just one person dropping the ball really can affect everybody. And even if you're getting your job done, typically when you're working in a team setting or a team-based initiative, if one person is lagging, yes, we'll be able to identify that one person is lagging. However, it still sheds a negative light on the group as a whole, because we're all working together.
Definitely. And if I could just put a little pin in there, as a talent acquisition specialist that looks at resumes all the time, what Mr. Brown was just really referring to is cross-functional work. And we love to see that on resumes. So you having the ability to work with multiple teams for one particular individual or one particular project or job, that is a great highlight on resume. So I just wanted to put that pin in there. Dr. Jasmine, you can go ahead now.
So I agree with Coach Ev. I agree with you, Dominique. It's important for me to understand the professionalism that is first stated in that particular environment, and then reading the room. I'm a big proponent of just reading the room. If you go into an environment and everyone is communicating a particular way and they are, respecting each other's space, whatever it is, if you're going into this particular place, read the room, become a part, assimilate as best as you possibly can, and try to do the things that they do. When in Rome, what's the quote? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So it's the same in the same vein. If you are in this work environment and this is the culture, because we like to use the word culture a lot. Culture is a really good word. Your workplace culture is specific to how you're going to communicate, how you're going to, present any type of professional environment for you, or professional, things in the way that you present yourself is all about what that culture is like. So I just feel like reading the room is it can really save you a lot of time. And if you are one of those people who just can't read the room and you just are going to come in like yourself as the bulldozer, or the, that you are, that's okay. But just know that there are going to be times when you're going to need to do that in order to get your, job done. Really, this professionalism helps you really get your job done a lot better, and as we go into other conversations, it's about getting the having the end result and having the perfect end result that you want to have. The expected end is what you're wanting. So I think it's important for us to read the room and pay attention.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree 100% with reading the room. It's so important, especially I know going back to kind of like attire, when I came from or visiting an Amazon location, it's so relaxed, like extremely relaxed. So if you were to come in there with a suit and tie every single day, it's like you're not fitting into the culture there. Essentially, that's what it is too. You're going to stand out just because it's so relaxed now. And you're like, what's like, even at the VP level, it's no suit and tie situation. So definitely want to read the room, even of those small things like that. Okay, so thank you guys for that insight. And to kind of keep the conversation going, so when it comes to personal matters, and we know that we want to build relationships with our coworkers, with our peers, but how often or should personal matters come up in the professional setting, in the workplace? And also, to add to that question, salary conversations come up in the workplace as well?
I have a different approach. Okay. I'll tell you, in the therapy, medical kind of world, we don't have the salary bands and the tiers and things like that in some areas. And honestly, that is one taboo conversation, specifically with salary, that we just don't discuss. And do I believe that that's right? No, absolutely not. But it just doesn't come up. And on a personal matter, you might have a personal relationship with someone, and it may come up then, right? But it has been a really, really hush subject. So hopefully I can learn something from you all, because, if you work in a corporate environment, my husband works for the government. So a lot of times it's like they know exactly what everyone makes. That is really great. I will tell you, that's wonderful. It should not be a secret. And it's not fair that most companies do that, but that's just kind of how, of course, here we go. Another way we can say the culture. This is the culture of this particular side of things. As far as personal things, I think it really matters about with whom you're sharing those personal things with. And I will talk about myself. I am an open book with the things I've healed from. That's what I'm going to say. Me and my therapist have talked about it. I'm okay. I can tell you, I'm fine. I believe God and therapy all together, So when it comes down to it, if I'm sharing it with you, it's something that I don't care if other people know, but I'm sharing it with you because you're a person who I've made a friend with at work, right? And because of, I don't know how the best way to say this, because I've seen the integrity of this particular person, then I'll share specific things with them, right?
Mhm.
Now, is that something that I'm sharing with everyone, that I had a toenail fall off on my way? That's not what you're sharing with Office once you jump on your Zoom, things like that. But when it comes down to it, there are certain people who you create these relationships with at work, and they often know some personal things.
Mhm.
But on the flip side of that, if you're a closed book, that's okay too. But understand, if you got married over the weekend, do not expect an office gift. And that's all I have to say about personal exchanges.
Very true.
That's 1,000% fair. I'm kind of feel you on that. I'm in the educational sector, so of course, like, it's federal funding, so you can Google and see what everybody makes. But I know also personally, my personality is a little bit more forward. So I've asked people, I've been in this role probably since August 27th. I've asked people around me what they make, because I am also aware of DEI and how certain things trickle down to certain people depending on their skin color. And I have no problem. I don't want to say confronting a system, but at least let me be aware. I am in a space where there is a woman that is not too far from me, and she does not look like me, and she makes a little bit more than me. And when I look at experience level, there's no reason why. But I also asked her, like, where do you fall here? And even though it's federal funding, because she knew someone, she was able to be bumped up a few grades on certain aspects. Even though it's technically against the law, it's the power of relationship. It's the power of connection. Sometimes when you have, the right person, they're able to do certain things. And it's, even though it may be against the rules, I think it just goes to the beauty and showing the power of human connection. When you build relationships and get to know people on a personal level, sometimes you find commonality, and they get to a space where it's like, hey, you know what, thank you for supporting me. Thank you for, covering me, and hey, or whatever it may be. And it's like, hey, you know what, I'm in this new space now. Let me see what I can do. And I think it's beautiful that we can do that. I think that people that look like us should do it more, because what we see, in my opinion, on the other side of things, and I know Dom's the HR guru, so this is probably like sending her in wires. It's kind of like we don't do it, and they've been doing it for a while. And I'm gonna say it's a system that I do believe is at the core of it. It's right. It's connection. Why would I not, like, why would I get a job become a VP at JP Morgan Chase, and we need a VP of HR, and I'm not, hey, Dominique, you interested? Whether you're interested or not, at least apply, and go from there. That's the power of relationship and connection. So I do believe to a certain degree there's a safety or a space, but also identifying, like, now I'm a believer of God, so I don't want to throw that into it, but understanding why you're in certain places, because sometimes you have a job and some things have aligned for you to go in and to bring some light to a chaotic culture, because some work cultures are chaotic, right? And if you come in and you're organized and you're shining your light by kind of moving in the level of excellence, that is a good behavior that bleeds. But also kind of think, like, kind of doing some self-discovery. Hey, why am I in this role? Why am I here? Because some systems you're not supposed to fight. Some systems you're supposed to work and allow them to do what they do, give you a check and you go on about your day. But then some systems you're supposed to be a beacon of light, a beacon of change, where maybe everybody who came into this culture they saw was chaotic because they read the room and realized everybody's all over the place. Sometimes, maybe not adapt to that, but just do what you can and then write it out. But then some people are put in certain professional environments, I do believe, to completely shift everything around them. And that's kind of how I've always felt about me personally. I go into spaces unintentionally, and they just kind of start to maneuver. I think it's also a level of self-awareness in that I think is really important when you're stepping into corporate America. It's not just about a job. It's not just about a check. Sometimes it's about the imprint that you're supposed to leave within a body or organization or in a team. I think we have to kind of think from that perspective and not just kind of throw that to the side. I'm just going to get a check.
Definitely, 100% agree with that. And even from the HR, talent acquisition stance, when it comes to those conversations about salary, I'm lucky enough to work for, and even it being two major companies, to have not worked for companies that don't want you. They say, no, you can't talk about your salary. I'm very, very fortunate to have been employed by HRs that are very open. We do have pay ranges, and depending again on where you fall, maybe your first offer, but a lot of the time too, especially within our culture, we are to accept that first offer because that means you got a job. And so you need to take that job, right? And so a lot of the times we weren't taught. Actually, you need to advocate for yourself. You need to negotiate, and you need to create a business case to why you do deserve a certain amount of, a certain dollar, and what you're going to bring to the table. And we aren't taught that art of negotiation as well, too, which it is definitely an art to it. But you have to know what you bring to the table to be able to have a standing chance to get those numbers higher to the top tier of your pay band. So again, a lot of people, or some individuals, they may have a little bit of a higher starting pay band than you, but it's like, what did they do to get there? Because you guys are working within the same area, the same title. So what did they do, and how did they present themselves to get that number up a little bit higher? So just a little input in regards to that salary negotiation and salary talk. So the next
I'm taking notes.
Please do, because like I said, it's definitely, the number can move. I always tell everybody, never take the first number. That's going to be your lowest offer. Never take the first number.
And that's a helpful tip that I was there. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That was not something I was told early in my corporate journey. Never take the first number. We're so, as you mentioned, the society is telling us, or our culture is saying, get a job and get started. But no, like, understand my value, understand what I bring to the table, but also be bold enough to communicate that effectively. This is what I can do. And so that's something that's really noteworthy to keep in mind. Like, don't take the first one. Advocate for yourself.
Right.
And it's good information to know, because you're right, Coach Ev, I feel the same way. I didn't get that same advice, but I also know that specifically in our field, we really want a job right out of school. We have to have one. Most of the speech language pathologists I know tend to fall on the type A personality side, very organized. They've talked about this for years and years. They've gone through their bachelor's and master's, or, had a first career and decided to get their master's. And another part of that is, especially for our job or in our field, and I don't know how this falls for you all, and I know this is kind of going into a different direction, but a lot of the students that I mentor, or people who are in school now, I talk to them about things that are too good to be true, because some salaries are, they're presenting them in this way. You get this amount sign-on bonus, and you get this amount of this, but you end up having a caseload of 200 students if you're working in the school system, or you have you have these ridiculous productivity demands, that it's almost near impossible, where you can't even go to the restroom, and they're giving you these, so it's important to know these things beforehand.
Definitely. Thank you for
I actually removed myself from an application process the other day because the hours for this nice salary were 8 to 8, Monday through Thursday. And I'm like, that's slavery. But it just goes to show that sometimes it's not really about the dollar amount. Kind of reading through some of those other specs, because I would have been like, oh my God, this salary is perfect, but I would have had to commit so much more of my life than what I have desired to. And it's like,
especially at this time in your life too, at this time in your life. And just to say that, and I think this can go on and on about salary and money, because it's so important. But I also tell people that, you need to examine and look through the things that they are also providing for you, because the dollar amount may be great, but they don't give you benefits. Or the dollar amount may be pretty good, but they pay for us, we have to have continuing education, we have to have a license, we have to have certification. They pay for all those things, and then they also pay for these things. These are things that you can't put a dollar amount on, because you're going to have to pay out of pocket anyway in order to maintain that job. So you need to be able to say, you know what, this job may not be paying as much as they are, but they are covering things that I'm going to have to pay out of pocket for anyway. So it's also good to look into those directions too. It's really just really looking at the fine print of what a position is offering you as well.
Definitely. This is definitely all great content, and actually another workshop that we do have that's around interviewing and resume prep and negotiation and salary talk. So you guys are just starting that conversation a little early for us, but thank you so much for it. It's great content, and it's all around that workplace professionalism, etiquette, and what conversations we should have and which ones we shouldn't have. So I want to go ahead and before we move on, just anyone that has joined us, thank you for joining us. And please make sure that you do share this on Facebook, because the conversation is not over just yet. We're kind of right along in the middle or so, but we are going to, I want to make sure that everyone shares this information so that we can get the word out as much as possible. So let's move on and talk a little bit about social media and professionalism. And so I will start this off just from that HR point of view. When you are searching for a job, and when you are putting in applications everywhere, please make sure your social media is not chaotic, and something that you wouldn't want a future employer to look at, because it may not say it in the job application and every employer may not do it. But if they're looking at someone and the role that you're applying for, we may have to consider your character, and what you feel is appropriate to put out there on Facebook or Instagram. And you're okay with that says a lot about your character as well too. So you do want to be mindful about those things, especially during the times that you are searching for jobs. And it's just think twice about it before you put it out there. And then like for myself, I also have a work Instagram, and that's basically to put information up for about jobs that I may have available, events that I may have going on. I have that completely separate from my personal one, though I'm still mindful of my personal Instagram as well too. It's not going to be anything wild and crazy, because anybody can find anybody on Instagram or on Facebook, right? But I do keep my work one and my personal one separate. And my work one is going to have a tag on there that those are my thoughts, those are my opinions. They are not necessarily my employer's thoughts and opinions, but they have given me the range to post a job posting here, or a flyer for a job posting, or an event here. So what do you guys, or how do you guys feel about social media, and what one should kind of, what is professionalism in the social world?
This is a question that I look forward to the discussion. I do know, of course, social media is a major, it's not going anywhere. Let's just be honest. The world has gone digital, and social, it's just there. And I totally agree with being mindful of what you present, because of course it is typically somebody's introduction to you. I know, like, for example, I've been in a scenario where I applied for a role, they went to my LinkedIn, and then in my follow-up interview, someone mentioned something that was on my YouTube channel. And I'm like, that's not there. So it is one of those things that could honestly work for you. Now, in a perfect world, I wish that they could be separate to allow individuals to have a space or a place where they did not have to feel as guarded, or they could be a variation or version of themselves they desire to be. I do wish that, but that's just not the society that we live in. And everything really just kind of intertwined. So I do think you have to be very careful. For example, I work in a school system. So even though I am not front facing with children every single day, like, these kids have found my Instagram. I've walked into school and hear Coach Ev, and I'm like, no, no. But, so even kind of thinking about that, because, for example, even though I am not front facing with children, if they went to my social media and saw something that might have been totally contrary, or saw, for worst case scenario, me doing drugs and that call, it would have affected how they viewed me, which would automatically have taken away the impact that I probably could have made on them, because it was like, hey, you know what? You may not be the trustworthy source that I thought you could have been for anything. So I do think it's important. I hate that it has to be that way. But I mean, in all else fails, put your profiles on private. But as someone who does digital marketing and social media marketing, anything you put on Al Gore's internet can be found. Nothing is really private. So in worst case scenario, of course, don't place it out there. But it also depends on your industry, because some industries utilizing social media, being a lot more authentic on the platform, is a way for extreme growth, is a great way for, conversation. So I know a guy that he started off writing blog posts for, like I said, Afrotech website about DEI. He ended up landing a job because somebody saw on Facebook that he posted his written work, and it kind of turned into a position. So I mean, it has its pros and its cons, but when all else fails, just don't post it. Because the beautiful thing about life is that you can enjoy yourself, enjoy your experiences, enjoy your moments, and not have to share everything with the entire world, especially if you're in that process of looking for a job. Because people, I believe this, and Dominique, you can correct me, I think sometimes in certain scenarios, people are finding a way to make you not qualify for the role that you're actually beyond qualified for. And we have to be careful, especially in my opinion, as people of color, to ensure that we don't hand them the bone for them to be able to slap us with, because that may be the thing to say, well, this person's appearingly wild on social media and they deal with confidential information at work. We can't trust them. And that may not have been the case, but they have something to leverage, especially in that space where you're looking for employment.
Very true.
So I agree with everything you said. It's important to utilize the security and privacy settings on your personal social media pages. And it's also important to understand that if you are looking for a job, then it should be as professional as possible. Also for students who are looking to get into college. I mean, honestly, this is the thing now, right? You're trying to get into college, you're trying to get in graduate school.
Internship.
And internships, absolutely. And as horrible as it sounds to say someone will run to your social media page to look for you to see if, how are you representing them? Because if you say you are going to be a student at fill in the blank college or fill in the blank university, scholarships as well, absolutely. If you are saying that you're about to represent this brand and say, I am going to say, hey, I just won, the shameless plug for Kiera Potts Foundation scholarships. I just won this. But then on the same side, the next post you post is, your 21st birthday party that got a little bit, wild. It is not necessarily what people want to represent their brand. And so I said it earlier about professionalism is representing yourself or your personal brand, but consider everything else that you're connected to, everything else that you can connected to, your parents' brand. I mean, if you want to, we want to go down that route, but then also wherever you're going to put your name on, if you're going to say, I am a student here, or I work here, you want to be able to say that the company brand and your personal brand kind of match a little bit. And so social media is a great place to display that. So instead of saying, hey, don't do this on your social media page, but it's a wonderful way to display how you're representing the brand of your company or your own personal company, if you're an entrepreneur. That's how you want people to know who you are. And so I really do think it's important that we do take a look at our social media pages. And, it's one thing if you're on vacation, but it's another thing is every post you make has something to do with, how you spend your weekends and things like that. I'll tell you this, when I taught for approximately about 7.5 years at Murray State University in Murray, Kentucky. And most of my students know, if they are watching this, that they could not be my friend on Facebook, because my main thing I said to them is, I don't want to know what you do on your weekends, and I don't want you to know what I do on my weekends. So as soon as they all graduated, they ran down, and it was interesting. I got a lot of friend requests as soon as they crossed the page, because that was how I put it out there. Because honestly, I want to allow you to be who you are, during this time. And I don't want to put anything out there. I don't want to think differently about you when I come to class to teach you. And I don't want you to think the same thing about me. You might see something on my social media that you don't like, So I feel like it's important that we represent who we truly are on there. And as Coach F said, it's not important to post everything that you do, because we know you have a life outside of that. We know you do, and you don't necessarily have to post it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So I want to go ahead and transition a little bit to communication and effective communication. So how do you guys feel that someone could develop their communication skills? So let's say if, you are a graduating senior from high school or from college, and you're ready to go into that workforce, or you're preparing to go into your first full-time job, and you're a little hesitant about how you speak, you talk to others. How do we develop that skill set?
From a professional, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go for it. Okay, well, as someone who has not always been an effective communicator, that is a space that in my mid to later 20s, I had to really work on. I learned that I was more so accustomed to responding than effectively communicating for a solution or resolve when it came to individuals. It was like I knew how to respond to what you said, but I didn't know how to actively listen, digest that, and then of course turn that into a conversation that's going to have a solution and that gets us somewhere. So what I personally had to do, because I know my communication style, my learning style, I had to learn how to stop talking, and I actually would write stuff down especially if it's an intentional conversation that I need to have. I would take notes on it, only because I knew that I'm triggered I'm wired at that moment in time to just respond to what you're saying, and I'm almost listening for loopholes. And a lot of us are like this because we're argumentative. We come from homes where our parents typically argue, so we see and naturally argue with people. Unfortunately, a lot of us, I won't say all of us, and so kind of realize that could be a dangerous, dangerous, not so good weapon when it came to stepping into corporate America. I had to really work on that. And so I had to actually actively just kind of write stuff down, listen for keywords, so that I actually made a formidable response that made sense, that got us to the end goal. But of course, also naturally just thinking this conversation, this is always about having an end goal or getting to an end point, getting to a resolution. That's the mindset that has to go into effective communication, knowing that we're talking and we're communicating to get somewhere, not just to hear each other out. We want to hear each other out, digest the information, and then kind of take this to where we need it to go.
That's a really good idea, to kind of take notes, the key words. I like that you said that. That's something that
it was hard. It was super hard. It was definitely challenging because it was outside of my norm. But even now, I can say that when it comes to workplace, I am a pretty effective communicator, but it's also now I'm not wired to argue. I'm listening. Okay, you know what? What are they sharing with me? Okay, what am I hearing? Because then I'm at this point, I'm not replying. I'm more so asking questions for further clarity. And so now we get to the point of the end of a thing. I've got so much clarity on what you were thinking, what you felt, and sometimes what you might have missed, that when I share with you, it's like we're able to see each other's blind spots and then kind of get to a resolve much faster.
And I like what you said when it comes to effective communication. You started to learn how you communicated. So one of the strategies we use for a lot of the people or clients that I work with is learning about their own communication style. If you are the type of person like Coach Ev, who really loves to kind of jump into those conversations, and I'm one of those people too, you hear a nugget and you're like, oh, I want to respond to that. If you are that type of person, we have to figure out ways that help you to communicate better with the person you're talking to. So first, you have to know your own communication style. And then the other part of this, because communication is usually between two or more parties, you have to know your audience. So if you're communicating with someone who is a person who doesn't like to be interrupted, that's something you've got to study a little bit. Now, you won't know that originally, but you will if you, jumped in too soon and they were like, oh, you interrupted me. Now I forgot, case in point, my husband. Sometimes he forgets things because I've jumped into the conversation because I'm so excited. But I've learned to allow him to get a chance to kind of finish his statement, because that allows him to be effective in his communication as well. And so one of the things you have, knowing your own communication style and then also knowing your audience's communication style, helps to establish a great foundation for the two communicators. If you're speaking to a group of people, it's important to know your audience then as well. One of the biggest things that I tell people all the time, if you're familiar with the love languages, so the book, The Love Languages, and I'm thinking about writing a book called The Communication Languages, TM Registered, whatever you have to say to make sure nobody else steals it. But I feel like that there are people don't know their audience. So you're trying to tell somebody some information in your, say, for instance, your field. So if Dominique is talking to someone who is not in the HR field and you're speaking in HR, and they're like, they could care less, how much is it going to cost me? You're not effectively communicating with the accountant part of your job, of your company. And so knowing your audience can help you with effective communication, because you'll know how to say what they need or say their love language, which in the accountant terms is money. What's my bottom line? You can say, hey, it's going to cost you this amount of money for us to do X, Y, and Z with the HR stuff, right? But the HR stuff is on the background. Doesn't mean that the HR stuff isn't important. It just means that to them, it's not as important as knowing how much it's going to cost. So I always think that learning that person's love, that language that they speak, is really important. And you get so much farther with people if you were to do that type of communication style.
Awesome. Great points, both of you guys. Thank you. I think I took something from both of you guys that I'll be implementing into my everyday kind of workflow when it comes to having conversations with others, and the way that I'm listening and responding to other individuals too. And for those that are listening too, there are several different trainings that are available too online. And if you have the subscription, I think they offer like free subscriptions for like maybe 30 days, 45 days, but LinkedIn Learning has a lot of learning when it comes to communication, the art of communication. How do you really begin to hone in on those skills and really be able to present yourself in such a way that you're not even nervous to go ahead, in front of someone or to speak in front of others as well too. So definitely utilize those resources that are available to you, whether if they're free or you may have to pay a small amount of, you're really kind of investing in yourself and in your future as well too. So please keep those in mind. So let's talk a little bit now. We have mostly been talking about verbal communication. Now, what about some do's and don'ts when it comes to email etiquette? I know I have my opinion on those, but so the do's and don'ts of email communication. But we have to keep in mind that the way that the things that we are writing and the way it's coming out in our head and we're typing it out, it may not read or sound the same way to the person who you're sending this communication out to. So we have to be very, very mindful of the terms that we utilize, the words that we use, the intro to our email, the closing to our email as well too. So do's and don'ts on emails.
Well, first you need to say hi, at least address the person you're speaking with.
Use my
say hello, okay? Introduce yourself, especially if this is your first time emailing this person. You need to say who you are, what your purpose for this email is and everything. Keep your per my last email, quote unquote, to a minimum. Working with students, and I'm going to talk to the students now. I understand that you are excited about emailing this person and you really just need to get this thing done, right? But it's important to make sure that your greeting is there, you have punctuation, and you're very clear about what you need, as well as the time frame that you would like to have a response. Because as I have seen many times, students that will say, I need to get in your class, please open it. Okay, great. Who are you? First. So I think that's the part too. You know, you have to be very courteous when you're talking to people through email. So definitely a greeting, say hi, say who you are, say your purpose for your email, and, you know, say when you would like a follow-up, or, you know, or say that you'll follow up in so many days to, you know, check on the status of this particular email. So I think that it's important to say who you are, what you need. So WH questions are things it's kind of how I put things out there. Who you are, what you need, when you need it, and how they can deliver these things. Thank you very much for this email. Sincerely, kindly, Jasmine Young.
Now, this may get me in trouble, but I operate off of the longer the email, the better. And I know some people majority of the world probably hates long emails, but this is why I think that they're better. It gives you a chance to flush it all out, for it to be extremely thorough. I will bullet point the stew out of an email just to make sure everything is clear, because I want to make sure that, hey, you know what? I'm communicating everything that is so clear to you and to me that we can get to that desired outcome or whatever that expected end is. So I prefer that style of email communication because it does seem to work. I do also, let me give you a tool. So there's a thing that's floating around, artificial intelligence. It's not per se new, but it is very helpful in certain situations like this. So there's a website called Grammarly, Grammarly, just Google it. And what I do when I have to write an email that I am unsure if some of me got into the way, I will type it out, and then I will copy it and put it in Grammarly, and I will set the tone of the email to neutral. And so that way it'll automatically recalibrate my words to ensure that there's not a lot of when it needs to be just some ha. So honestly, sometimes using little tools like that will really be helpful, especially when you're communicating something where you're in need of something. If somebody has something that you're in need of, you cannot go at them aggressively, especially in the corporate space or any space, because they may be more prone to kind of put you on ice or get back to you. So I would say definitely utilizing Grammarly, that neutral component. It will save you every single time, but always be as thorough as possible. I know some long emails may bother people, but at least it's clear, and then you're closing with what you need, as she said, and when you need it by.
Okay. So from my stance, as someone that only works off of emails, don't send me a long email, but I'm going to open it and say it's too long. I'll look at it later. It's just too much for me right now. I can't process all of that. So therefore, that's pushed your email now to 5 hours later. So give me 5 hours from whenever you requested a contact back.
Listen to her, don't listen to me. She's the one that gives people jobs. Don't listen to me.
No, but this goes back to know your audience, though, too. And it depends, again, on the situation, what you're emailing, the content of your email. If we're going over a project or that has aggressive timelines, or it needs to be very detailed, yes, then okay, let's get that information, give me all that information. Other than that, let's jump on a call and kind of discuss this kind of thing. But I know I've worked with several different managers, and especially coming from the recruiting of engineers. So I'm working a lot with senior level engineering managers. They want straight to the point. They don't want any fluff. Almost don't even say hi. Just say what you need and when you need it by, and that's it. But that's me being aware of my audience, though, too. They are short and limited on time frame. So therefore, we need to get to the point, and we need to get to the point quickly, too. So I would just say, know your audience. And it just really depends on what the text is or what the situation is that you're emailing about. So That's just my 2 cents there. If your company has an IM, an instant messenger type of thing, those are very beneficial as well too. Sometimes we don't need to send a whole drafted email. You can just hit them up and we can forget about all the pleasantries and stuff. We're straight to the point there too for a quick 1 question, 2 question type of thing too. So don't forget about your IMs as well too for whatever company, if your company has those as well too. All right, guys. So that was some good info in regards to do's and don'ts. Oh, and timelines with emails too. If you don't necessarily put in there, okay, we need a response by end of day or by close of business tomorrow. Have the expectation that give that person the courtesy of 24 to 48 hours to get back to you. Like you said, you're not the only one emailing them, that individual. So they may have had a busy day and they put their emails off until the next day. So please have the courtesy of 24 to 40 hours for that person to respond back to you, okay? All right. So the next thing that we want to to start to wrap up this conversation, and what type of recommendations would you give an individual that maybe, let's say you have a mentee and they're coming to you about they're having issues maybe with a manager, with a peer, and they don't know how to address that. And they don't know how to confront those type of things. And I find that is something that we often overlook when it comes, that's another, conversation that can be very difficult, and we have to communicate clearly and we have to make our stance clear as well too. But we also don't want to make sure we get ourselves in trouble or anything like that. So how do we communicate what to do and how to strategize that for a mentee of ours?
So there's a book called Crucial Conversations, I think it's called, that is a really good way of an introduction to what you should do. One of the things that a lot of people don't like is to have those critical conversations. A lot of people will say that they're not confrontational, but you don't have to be confrontational to have critical conversations. And so, most often the diplomatic approach is it's best. You come to a person understanding their time, understanding maybe even decisions they have made. I have these conversations a lot with mentees, and we talk about ways that we can communicate with people to get what they need. And a lot of that means to say, I understand that this decision was made, and this is just a template for me. I understand that this decision was made about X, Y, and Z for this particular purpose. But is there a way that we can have a conversation about this at a different time related to this particular thing so that I can have the things that I need for my job? So for instance, for me, for my mentees, they're usually new graduates. They're coming into facilities where they may not have enough resources. And so these are conversations you can have with in our job, at a skilled nursing facility or at a hospital. This is a rehab director. Most rehab directors are not your own discipline or not a speech pathologist. They may be a physical therapist. And so here again, this is a love language thing. What does your physical therapy rehab director need to hear from you in order for you to get your job done? I have patients that have a need. Is there a way that I can get these things for my patients so that we can better improve their outcomes for these things? And so it's important to just approach them in that way and understand that the worst thing they can do is say no. But if they have a bottom line like you to improve the patient outcomes, because that's how you led with it, then they are definitely going to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful. Okay. And also understanding that there's a reason why you're asking for these things. And sometimes you have to come with the proof that this particular thing is necessary for you to get your job done. And that's just one example, but that's what I really, that's the recommendation I give to people. Think about what you need. What is it? Why do you need to have this conversation? Even if it's a conversation that is about equity in your office. Why do you want to have this conversation, and why do you think this is a problem? Examine both sides and then, develop your plan of action, and also practice it with someone else so that they can be another eye for you to see if what you're conveying is not animosity or any type of, anger or things like that, because that could be detrimental to the message that you want to give to the person you're speaking with.
I thoroughly agree. The only thing that I would probably add or expound upon is one of the things that I think has been really helpful as I've matriculated through different environments was also remembering and keeping in the back of my mind, at the forefront of my mind, that always have some data, or I guess or in most situations, an example. The worst thing you could do is kind of have somebody's ear where you now have the opportunity in the moment to affect change or get what you need. But when they say, well, what do you need? And you don't really have an exact example, like give them a reference point, give yourself a reference point. So I would say, if you're going to step into any kind of intentional conversation or any kind of, where you want an outcome, have an example or two. So that way you have a reference point for that individual that you're talking to be able to go back to hopefully further your case. And sometimes you may have to write that stuff down. Like I'm good for writing down an example. These are the two examples I want to utilize. So that way I can kind of take them back to that moment, kind of give them some clarity, give them context as to why I'm positioning what I'm positioning. Then boom, now we have, I don't want to call it a case study, but in essence, almost a case study. And we have something that we can work with to get to our end goal. So always have some sort of data stat or at least an example to help you better your case.
Awesome. And I agree with both, all the information that you both have shared. And I also say too, sometimes you may have to practice that conversation with another individual before you actually have it with the person that you're trying to really reach out to and ask something from. You may need to practice it. You may need to have somebody proofread an email for you. I've done that plenty of times. Like, hey, what do you think about this email before I hit send on it too? You may have to do that before. So it's no shame in doing that. Also. So I definitely want to be mindful of time, and I want to, make sure that we are past our hour time. But as we begin to wrap up, is there any other nuggets that you guys would like to share? Any other details? And please also make sure that you share how, if someone's interested in learning a little bit more, getting in contact with either one of you guys, if you guys can provide us with that information. But just to kind of close it out, what would you guys like to end with? And I'll hand it over to Dr. Desmond.
I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I love to talk about communication. I think that's how we survive as people. We have decided that this is the way we're going to communicate with each other. And I feel like when we master that form of communication, we can get so many things done so much easier when we master those things. I think some of the tidbits that I would talk about and that we didn't get a chance to talk about is be mindful of your body language, be mindful of the way you come across. We as melanated people, we have our ways of doing things and saying things, and we can make a face and we know exactly what we mean, right? But that's not always culturally specific. It is a culturally specific thing that's not culturally transitive. I guess you could say it doesn't cross different cultures. And so it's important for us to understand that those things happen. We are a part of a culture in a country that, terms like angry Black woman comes up sometimes and things like that. And so yes, we can be angry. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being angry. We have lots of reasons to be that way. But if you need to get something done, that's not always the way to come across, right? So it's important for us to understand that. And then, also take feedback from other people to hear what they have to say about the way you communicate. and being okay with that and working on those things personal. It's a personal journey for sure. And if you want to be a better communicator, there are ways to do that. You can learn how to be a better communicator. So I can be reached on all the socials. I am Dr. Jazzy, DRJAZZY, your YOUR Fave SLP. So that's a lot to say in a nutshell. Dr. Jazzy, your Fave SLP on Instagram, and on TikTok, as well as Jasmine Young on Facebook, as well as Jasmine Young on LinkedIn. And my business is Community Therapy SLP on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And you can reach me there. Send me a DM. I love to talk to people. So if you guys have any questions about anything, I'm definitely willing to answer anything you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for bringing up, those nonverbal, things as well too. That is something that we skipped over, but thank you so much for bringing that up as well. Coach F?
Oh, yeah. Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you guys so much for having me. If I had to, I guess, leave with the thing, I would probably just say for anybody who's struggling in the space of communication or trying to strengthen that skill, I would say keep in mind that your goal is to communicate confidently. Nobody likes the lack of confidence. It can make you seem untrustworthy, uninformed, all these different things that it just doesn't have to be if you simply just do some things like practice, whether it's in a mirror or on the phone with a friend, or if it's just you in the house, just kind of practice communicating certain things. So I would definitely say let your goal be to confidently communicate so that way that things can happen. I've seen so many things move faster because I appeared confident, even when I didn't really know the fullness of what I probably needed to know. That confidence really just kind of overshadowed in some instances. So keep that in mind. Try to communicate confidently. You can connect with me on all social media. It's just the same thing. It's Coach Eb, which is ITSCOACHEV. It's also my website. Dr. Jasmine, you ready to publish that book? Let me know. I got you. I have a publishing company as well, so we can get that out to the world, because I do believe that'll help, especially our next generation of Black and Brown individuals, because communication is becoming a lost art because everything has gone so digital. So people can type and text, but they don't know how to sometimes effectively have necessary conversations. So I think that'd be a great resource that to have in the hands of people young and old. So that was me. Confidently communicate. I promise you, it'll get you a lot farther in life when you can deliver stuff in confidence.
Yes, I love that. That is very, very true. 110% agree with you on that. So in conclusion, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our two amazing guests for providing us your time, jumping on, and then just providing us with so much knowledge and insight when it comes to communication. And glad that we were able to connect you two so we can get that book published really quickly. But thank you again. We truly do appreciate it. And anyone that is interested in getting more information, of course, the POTS Foundation, Instagram, Facebook, please feel free to reach out to us. We are super excited to announce that scholarships are now open, so please share. So we do have 2 scholarships this year. One, we get to award a high school senior with a $3,000 scholarship. So we are really excited about that. And then another scholarship as well for $1,000 to I believe sophomore through senior in college as well too. So we are really, really excited for our scholarships to be open. So please spread the word. They are going to be also up on Instagram, Facebook, how you can apply and what you need to have to ensure that you complete your packets and get them sent over to us in a timely manner. All right, guys. So again, thank you so much for your time. We really did enjoy this conversation. Please feel free to reach out to us at the POTS Foundation. And we hope that everyone has had the opportunity to learn a lot and enjoy the rest of their evening. Thank you guys so much.